Welcome to Shelaborate. I'm Kath.
And I'm Kyra. This is our podcast for the girls, from the girls.
We're telling our stories, hyping up women who inspire us, and shelaborating every step of the way.
It's time to give you the girl talk you've been waiting for. Let's get into it.
I am going to start with, I don't usually sound like this. I lost my voice this weekend karaokeing, and I really wanted to sing Wicked, so that's what happens. I sound like a 12-year-old boy. I'm so sorry to listeners, sorry to our guests, but welcome back, Shelaborators. Thanks for tuning in for our next episode. We're super excited for this next guest. I'll have her introduce herself, but a little intro of how we got this connection. It's actually pretty cool. I think we've gotten a lot of support from the guys that we work with.
Oh yeah, a ton.
Our colleagues. And this guest's cousin actually linked us in. He's a friend that I work with. And we talk a lot about the podcast at work. And he's like, oh my God, I have this cousin. She's such a badass. She's this ultramarathon runner. She's a mother of two. Like, she's just so cool to talk to. And I think she would be perfect for your podcast. And I was like, yeah, send her over.
Immediately, yes.
We talked on the phone. I just felt like instantly you'd be perfect for the podcast. And we're so excited to have you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love your show. I've been listening to all the episodes whilst ultra running. Brings me great joy, and it's an absolute pleasure and honor to talk to both of you. So thanks to that cuz who made the connection.
Thanks, Andrew. Shout out to him.
Thank you.
Yeah, he had so much great things to say about you. He was so excited. I was like, I'm gonna have an interview with Emily this week, and he's like, oh my gosh.
He and I have been on quite a few adventures together.
For our listeners, can you just walk us through your life a little bit? Where are you from? Where are you now? And how did you get your start in running?
Born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. Lived most of my life here and lived in California for a little while, but mostly here. I met my husband doing a day hike on the Appalachian Trail, which I have since run.
Very cool.
But I met him, we were both getting sober at the time, so we were both kind of reinventing our lives and finding replacements for those negative habits, and being outside and in the woods was a big part of that. You know, fast forward now, I'm 43, I have two kids. I have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. I work full-time as a marketing communications strategist for an IT and cybersecurity company in Phoenix, Maryland. I've always run. I ran cross country in middle school and high school, and then but you know, those distances are minute compared to what these ultra marathon distances are. But it was a great starting point, because it was at that point that I knew that I liked to be off a track and off pavement. I liked other things under my feet.
I think what we really want to know is what motivates someone to sign up for a race that's over 50 miles and how you got into that.
It's a great question. I would ask the same question, and I did. It was a process, like most things are, and it was a surprise. That's what had started out as signing up for a training group to run a trail half marathon in the woods, so not on pavement, on trail, evolved into something as empowering and life-changing is running ultra marathons. So any distance over 26.2 miles is considered an ultra marathon. Your most popular distances are going to be that 50K, so 31 mile, 100K at 62, and then 100 milers and beyond. You know, you have 200, 250, 300 milers out there. So they span the course of days. And those are incredible too.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you signed up for that half marathon and then that training group that you worked with to train up for that first ultra marathon?
So at the start of COVID, which was a challenging time for everybody, all over the world, I think it was particularly challenging for maybe for people who deal with mental health struggles, which I do. I'm also a mother of two and I work in marketing and communications. And so at the start of COVID, I just started a new job. We were navigating virtual learning at home. I had a child under the age of 2 as well, and a 5-year-old. And there was a lot of energy invested in all of that. And it had been a very long time since I had really done anything to fill the hole in my soul and make me feel good about what I was doing and to really feed Emily what she needed to be the best I could be and showing up in every aspect as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, sister, employee, all of it. And so, at the suggestion of my husband, I joined a running group with a local organization, an actually running store chain called Charm City Run, yeah, Charm City. And I joined a half marathon trail running group and kind of just started showing up after work and running with these crazy people who have since become some of the most important people in my life. So that was what, 5 years ago? And I came to find out a couple of training sessions in that not everybody was training for a half marathon. Some people were training for a 50K, which at the time I thought was absolutely insane. It was definitely a surprise when they started to encourage me to contemplate running this 50K distance as well. Because up until that point, the farthest I had ever run without injury was a half marathon distance on the road. I tried to go beyond that a couple of times here and there over the course of the, years. Always been a runner. Really, the only thing that I've ever been decent at. Played soccer, played lacrosse. Wasn't great at either, but I could run. And so, but I didn't know how to increase my distance, and I thought this might be a good opportunity to do that.
Can you talk a little bit about the community that you had with that run group and how that catapulted you into doing the ultra marathon and kind of what that's meant to you as you've continued to do that throughout the years?
One, I'm pretty introverted for the most part, except when I'm running around in the woods for hours on end with these people. Um, so getting to know a group of people, when I joined this trail running group, I came to find out that I was the youngest. I was the most inexperienced, both of which were super cool because never a bad time to introduce some humility into your life. and I was also not the only one who was doing this for the first time. And so I got to know this group of people who were training for both the half marathon and the 31-mile distance, the 50K distance. And the race we were all training for the 50K distance was the Rosaryville 50K, and it was directed by veterans. And it was a really excellent first ultra marathon race because while it was on trail, it was not super technical, meaning there weren't a lot of rocks, there weren't too many ups and downs, so not a lot of elevation gain or climb. And it was a confidence booster when you finish something like that for the first time. And this was doable for me for the first time. But the people that there's definitely a certain vibe in the trail running community in general, I think. And that vibe, I would say, is extremely positive, extremely supportive. There's not a sense of overwhelming competition, especially when you get to do these long distances, because you're all out there, you're all experiencing the same amount of discomfort. The communities, they get goofy with it, they call it sufferfest, and like it's, yes, it is uncomfortable, and that's part of it, is pushing through the discomfort. But I think that getting to know these people over the course of 3 months whilst we were training for a distance of 31 miles was one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. It doesn't trump being a mother or marrying my husband by any means, but it's been an incredible gift because these people, you talk about everything under the sun. You're out there for hours and hours together, and you're running at a pace where you can hold conversation and make connections. When you're doing these races and you're running with strangers, I mean, you meet some of the coolest, wackiest people. I'm sure I'm one of the wackies, right? Like, it's just you just meet all of these characters from all walks of life that you would never think would be doing this, and yet they are. And I think it's because this is what fuels it fuels the soul. It checks all the boxes for me, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual. Like, all of the boxes are checked when I'm out there and I'm doing something that makes me a better person. It pushes me beyond my limits in a way that I wouldn't be able to experience elsewhere. And by overcoming the challenges, I'm able to bring those lessons back to other areas of my life.
I think people would be super lucky to meet you running out there. Just listening to you talk, I think it would be so fun to meet you on the trail.
About it for years, I'd be like,
Yeah, I'd be like, I've met the coolest person.
Well, thanks.
You keep mentioning being out in the woods off the trail. Is there something about being out in the woods that you enjoy, draws you out to maybe nature or something?
Absolutely. I think that it's a full spectrum experience. I think at a chemical level, you're out there in the woods, and with every footstep, there are just, nanoparticulates that are going to be influencing your how you feel, your health, all of that. There's experiencing all of the seasons on a trail. It's going to be you can run the same trail year round, and it's going to be a different run in the spring than it will be in the winter. You often run into wildlife. I encounter all sorts of awesome critters out there, and that's always magical. Touching the trees, even like this sounds super hippy dippy and loopy, I know.
Right up our alley.
We're here for it.
But I mean, there's being out that when you're running these longer races, you experience the sunrises and the sunsets, and it's a really primordial experience to be out there when the sun is rising, and you get to experience the different temperatures. You run in the rain, like, it's always an adventure. It's always an adventure, and it feels uncharted a lot of the time. And it's beautiful. I mean, running through pine trees, running through fields, running along rivers, through rivers, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. Running through thunderstorms, like, don't recommend that, but it happens. So, I mean, and it's always an adventure. You just don't know what's going to happen, and you got to be prepared, which is a great life lesson in general. Be prepared.
Yeah, can we talk about that preparation a little bit? Like, what does training look like for an ultra? What are some things that you have to think about training your body, training your minds? What are some things that you maybe didn't even realize that you had to prep for and you found out on race day that, oh, I didn't do this? Or what are some lessons learned?
Oh my God, that's happened so many times. I've run quite a few races, and every single one of them has an element of humility. It's never a perfect race, and thank goodness it's not, because then it wouldn't be a great adventure or a good story. And you always have something that you can take away from that experience. So when you're training for an ultra marathon, just like when you were training, if you were to be training for a marathon, you gradually build up, and you do your speed training, you do your distances, you do your recovery. Recovery is a monumentally important part of long distance running, because you're asking a lot of your body, and especially as women, when we have so much fluctuation throughout every month, And I think we're naturally more inclined to be able to tap into that agility factor. Like we know how to navigate the fluidity of hormones and emotions and all of that. And if we don't know, we learn. But I think that we're naturally really tuned into our bodies. And so making sure that you're setting yourself up for success, because it can be dangerous if you go out there and you push yourself for 50 miles and you have not trained for that, because you got to build up the muscle, you got to build up your cardiovascular, you got to fuel, you got to learn how to fuel while you're running. Typically while you're out there, you want to eat about 200 calories every hour. And there are different ways you can get those calories in. It's not always possible. You might, your body doesn't always show up for you as much as you can put in months and months and months of training and have a race on a bad day. And it can backfire, right? And you can have extreme GI distress and you're not able to take in what you need. And then you have to rely on your experience and those around you to know, is this safe to continue, or should I call it a day? And I will say this, that, we can do a lot more than we think we can do. Everybody can. And running ultra marathons has been one of the most powerful ways of illustrating that to me and to my family. You can do more than you think you can do. You're capable of big things, hard things. So when training, you build up in miles, and then you recover as much as you need to recover. Typically, I will run 5 days a week and recover 2. They do recommend, they being coaches, recommend weight training as well. I hate weight training. Oh my God, I hate weight training, but it is so important. um, so for the longer distances, you have to also train your stomach to handle solid food, I would say, for me. And you need to know what kind of hydrating works for you. Everybody's body responds differently to hydration. So, I am not a nutritionist, so I don't like to hand out nutrition advice. And it's all about, the trial and error whilst training to figure out what does work for you. I know that a big favorite amongst many of my trail running friends are the nerd gummies. I think it's incredible.
We love nerd gummies too.
Nerd gummies are great. I recently ran and did very well in a pretty highly competitive race, and those were my main source of fuel.
Nerds should sponsor you.
Yeah.
I'm sure they should sponsor somebody.
Why not you?
Yeah, who better than to...
PSA to nerds, sponsor Emily.
Yes, you guys are great. You get us from point A to point Z.
So you signed up for a half marathon when you joined your training group. How did you then end up running an ultra?
Yeah, so I think that when I started to run with this particular group of people, and the difference between running road and running trail ultras has a lot to do with pacing. So everybody kind of settles into their unique pacing, their scope of pacing. And a handful of the women that I was running with in particular, I was running at their pace, and they were training for these ultras or the ultra marathon in this group. And they picked up on my energy and my enthusiasm, and they were like, "Wow, you're pretty energetic. You should probably try this." To which I responded, "You're bananas, no way." And they said, "Well, just kind of tag along for some of these longer training runs." And so I did. And we went from, running an hour to 2 hours to 3.5 hours. The first 3.5 hour run at Patapsco State Park. I was actually not able to go with the training group because I had to work. So my husband and I went later on in the day, and he rode his mountain bike and I ran, and he biked and I ran at approximately the same pace, and it ended up being a great date. And it was really uncomfortable and really rewarding at the end. Actually, he finished and we had like 20 minutes left. I had 20 minutes left, and that's the other thing when you're training for ultras, you go by time, not distance, which is
I didn't know that.
which is kind of weird. Yeah, so you're not necessarily collecting miles. You're running 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, because depending on the course, you have all sorts of uneven terrain, and it's really hard to predict how many miles you're going to get in a 60-minute period of time. So you just run for that time. You got a goal, but really it's the time. And for the longer races, you want to really tune into your body and run by feel, so, and exertion. So, you might need to run slower, and that's okay too. But he finished this 3.5 hour run ride date, and I had 20 more minutes to go. And so I ended up just doing laps around a field until it got dark, which sucked. Um, but you get it done. You get it done. And when I finished that, I was so wonderfully hungry. And, we went and we got burgers afterwards, and they tasted so good. And it was just one of those, like, oh my gosh, I just did that. And it was really hard. And finishing it was super rewarding and empowering. And I vividly remember going into work the next week, and it was a really challenging week, both at work and at home. And I pulled on that confidence build that came with finishing something hard, doing something harder than I thought I could do, to carry me through. And that has kind of been a mantra. I can do hard things. I can run 100 miles. I can do this work. I can deal with this jerk. Like, that was poetic.
You mentioned that you brought your husband into doing that 3.5 hour run with you. How have you been able to kind of bring ultramarathon running into your family and kind of use that as a way to either like get closer or use the lessons learned to be either a better mother or a wife or person?
It's two-sided. When you are training, it's a big ask of yourself and it's a big ask of your family. There's a lot of time that goes into preparing to do something like run 50 miles or 62 miles or 100 miles, because you've got to be responsible, which means you've got to put in the time. And that's a great lesson in and of itself, that to do something well, you got to give it all you got. And that means time. It's not instant, right? And it means training, and it means preparation, and it means, leaning into the discomfort. It means making sacrifice. I got to get rest in, so maybe we don't stay up super late. I've got to make sure that I'm fueling well. So it's not eating crappy food, junk food. It's eating well. It's eating more vegetables, eating more protein. And so just kind of living that way in front of my kids. I won't say I've influenced my husband a lot in that regard, but living that way in front of my kids, even if they're not adopting those habits, they see it, and they see what can happen as a result. Running is a natural, it's a natural endorphin release. I come home, I feel better. It's a natural antidepressant, which is wonderful. And my kids and my husband will tell you that, you know, when I'm cranky, if I go out and I do a training run for an hour, hour and a half in the woods, I come back, I am a much more pleasant Emily to be around. And part of it is the endorphins, part of it is being in nature, it's the oxygen, part of it is challenging myself and getting that boost of confidence that, hey, I'm not, I'm doing okay here, and bringing that back into the household, especially for my daughter who is 12, and she's entering some wild waves as a 12-year-old girl in this world. And she knows that it brings me a lot of joy, and she sees me working really hard, and she sees it paying off, because not only am I doing these hard things, but I'm doing them well sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
That's
So
such a good example that you're setting for your kids.
Yeah.
I feel like that is awesome that you're saying, hey, I can do hard things. I don't give up. I set my mind to do them. I'm going to do them. And sometimes I do them really good.
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes I go in there, I've had really, really challenging, unfortunate experiences as well. And my kids have been present for those, right? They've been aware. Mom's out there. I was running 100K in Virginia in the mountains, and there was a massive thunder and lightning storm taking place, and we had no reception. And my kids and my husband were driving 6 hours to see me at the finish line, actually at one of the aid stations. So that's another thing for these longer races. You have aid stations every 5 to 12 miles, sometimes longer, where you are able to restock and refuel and pick up some good vibes, give a dab, give a high five, meet your crew if it's a longer race and you have crew or family. So they were driving out and there was this massive thunderstorm. Not only was there a massive thunderstorm, but the race was really poorly marked. So I had gone off and I had accumulated about nine bonus miles, which was really frustrating. And I threw my own little temper tantrum in the middle of the woods. There was nobody around, but I was throwing a temper tantrum. And then you know what? You collect yourself, and you're like, what? The only way out is through. So you gotta do the thing. And I had actually just reached the top of the mountain when this storm hit, and I was following another runner, and it was so scary because there was lightning and thunder and downpour. And it's like, man, we've all learned as kids, you don't want to be in the woods or up high in a lightning storm.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But you know what? We survived. And my kids were really scared. And I came through that finish line, and they have they asked, like, why didn't you quit? And it's like, I could have, I think a lot of people did, but there's also the other option, and it's to continue. It's to be smart about it, hunker down when you need to hunker down, be patient, and move forward. And so that was really cool. They've also been at races where I've been really injured and I've had to call it because that was the smarter choice. So it's about being smart. It's not always worth it. If you love something and you want to do it for as long as you possibly can, then sometimes you need to make the call.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because we have talked about that on the show before, is like dealing with injury. And I can imagine how difficult it must be when you've been training for months for a race and you get to a point where you're like, I could push it or I could be smart. Can you talk us through what that felt like?
In 2022, this group of trail friends and we decided that we were going to, long goal was a 100 miler. And along the way to that 100 miler, we were going to gradually increase our race distances. So we were going to run a couple 50Ks, we were going to run 100K, we were going to run a 70.5 mile, and then we were going to run the 100 miler. We were on track to do those races. Got the 50Ks under my belt, ran the 100K. And then there is a race called the Laurel Highlands, which is 70.5 miles in Roxylvania, Pennsylvania.
That's where I'm
And
from.
Really? It's
yeah,
called Roxylvania?
No,
Roxylvania.
Pennsylvania, but
It's super rocky. A lot of these trails are really rocky. And
I
this
believe
race
it.
is a qualifying race for the grandfather of all races in North America, called Western States. It's on the West Coast. It's a 100 miler. People come from all over the world to run this race, but in order to run it, you have to run qualifying races to get lottery tickets. Not lottery tickets to enter into the lottery. It takes approximately, on average, 6 years to get your ticket pulled to run this race because it's a limited participation. And the races that you have to run to qualify for these tickets are really, really hard. And so part of the deal was we were going to run these qualifying races. And The Laurel Highlands race, that 70.5 miler, was one of the shorter distances. Typically, they're 100 miles. This was one of the shorter distances because it is exceptionally challenging. A lot of climb, a lot of rocks. So we got there, and the race started, I think, at 5:30 in the morning in the dark, and it was 11.6 miles and a lot of climb between start and the first aid station. And a half a mile in, I broke my foot. And I didn't know it was broken, so I kept running. And I ran to that first aid station because this was in April. Yeah, this was in April. And the 100 miler that we were running was in September. So we were working our way through these challenging races, and I was so worried that I would have to stop. And I ran into the first aid station. Up until this point, I had been doing really well. I was placing in all these races because I was running pretty fast. And so I had to call it. I had to call the race. I was the very first DNF, or did not finish, of the race that year, which was heartbreaking. But the silver lining was I then got to crew all of the other friends that continued on. And oh my gosh, it was one of the most magical experiences because that's the other part of this is you do this with your friends and you're in it with them, and crewing is just as rewarding as the running. Yes, you're out there just as long, sometimes longer. You can't like just go sleep. You've got to be turned on and tuned in the whole time. And because you love this so much and you're so fond and for the of these people, and you're rooting for them, it's like the greatest joy in the world. So I was able to then crew these other friends of mine at each aid station, and oh my gosh, it was absolutely incredible. So I got to see, and not just them, like got seeing other runners come in, just like knowing the work that they're putting into this, watching them across the finish line. Oh, I get teary eyed. Like it's so cool. It's so cool. But I had to explain to my kids, like, yeah, I want to keep doing this. And had I continued to go on with that injury, I really, more likely than not, would have catastrophically injured myself farther into the race. And I would bet money on that because I ran that race this year and I placed fourth, and it was absolute insanity. I don't, Nobody should run that race with a broken foot.
The fact that you have to say that is like even just pretty wild.
But people do. People, and that's the other thing. Like you have these people out there, myself included, and maybe we push ourselves.
I think that's kind of part of ultras, pushing yourself beyond the ordinary. But I like that you're sharing kind of both sides of it. Is you can push yourself, but you need to know when to stop. That you can keep doing it later on. It's not a no forever. It's just no for now.
Beautifully said. No, not a no forever, no for now. I love that.
Can you take us back to your very first ultra and tell us about it? Tell us what was going through your mind, what it was like.
Yeah. So the very first ultra, I had a friend who I ran with more and more over the course of the training season. And he was like, we're going to crush this. We're going to finish it. You're going to do great. Just stay with me and I'll set our pace for us. And this first ultra was, I think I had said it was pretty runnable. So not a lot of climb, not a lot of technical. And they're not all runnable, right? Like a lot of the time you're doing a lot of power hiking, honestly, which is not for the faint of heart either. And I was running with him, and this was a 3 loop race. So, which I feel like loops can often be harder because if you're looping, once you get to that spot where you could stop, you've got to really convince yourself you got to keep going. So we were running, and I followed him for the first loop. And then I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna go a little faster. Are you cool if I keep going? And he had stopped to change his socks because we had to run through some water. And he was like, sure. So I started to pick up speed on the second loop, and then I started to feel really good. And I felt really good till about mile 28. And feeling really good means I didn't have any cramps. I didn't have any digestive distress or GI distress. I didn't have to go poop in the woods. Like, it was it was awesome. And like I wasn't absolutely exhausted. Around mile 28, with 3 miles left, it became apparent that I had really pushed myself. And I did start to get nauseous to the point where I had to stop and brace myself on a tree because I was looking at puking. And this guy behind me came past and he's like, "You okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that's the other thing. Like, these races, yes, you gear up, you bring your supplements, you bring your water, you bring your socks, you bring your poles, you bring your headlamp, but you, more importantly than anything, you bring your humanity. You don't just step over a runner who has fallen to gain a couple minutes. Like, we're all out there together, and we start together and we finish together. And so this runner, he could have just blown past me, but that rarely happens in trail running. People are always out there to offer first aid and support. People have stopped to sit with me when I was struggling. I've stopped to sit with people when they've been struggling. It doesn't, if you place, great, but really it's the experience. And so he is like, "Yes, you're probably going to throw up, and then you just finish. We're so close. You're good. You're good. You're good. Okay." And so he was right. I puked a little and then I kept going and I caught up to another guy, and he was younger than me, and he was having a time, and he was yelling to himself at himself and like smacking himself in the face and like it was very entertaining. So I just stuck behind him because he was fun to watch. And I followed him all the way to the finish line. So and we finished. And when I crossed the finish line, the race directors are always there to hand out whatever, and they said, "You just placed first in your age group. Well done." And it was the first race ultra I had ever run. And because I had done well and I had survived, it kind of lit that fire that, okay. And you would think after something like that, I think it took me like 5 hours and 40 something minutes after something like that, one and done. But that was not the case. It was, okay, when's the next one?
Wow.
If you could sum up what, like in maybe a sentence or a word, what keeps you coming back to the races, what would you say?
It's the shared experience in the extreme. It's going out there knowing that everybody out there is going to challenge themselves, and in a way that it's really hard to access anywhere else and in any other way. Not impossible, but it's how I access it. And in doing so, it becomes something spiritual for me. It it's a melding of all of the elements that make me human and fortify the humanity that I'm able to bring back into other areas of my life. I think that's what keeps me coming back.
You briefly mentioned your sobriety and then mental health. Is there anything that you want to share about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels. So I've had to navigate depression and anxiety my entire life, starting from a very young age. And that came hand in hand with alcoholism and recovery from alcoholism and body image issues and recovery from body image issues. And what trail running and ultra running and everything that brings has done is it's helped me rearrange how to be in the world today. It's hard to just be sometimes in this world as it is. And it's a fortification of all of my values when I'm out there running, when I'm suiting up and showing up to, yes, push myself, but also show up for my friends who are doing the same thing. Maybe years ago, I would have been running for all the wrong reasons. I run for different reasons today. I run not to lose weight, not to, burn calories, not to punish myself. I run for all the other reasons, to fuel my spiritual health, to fuel my mental health, to get stronger. To do these things, I have to do well and do well by my body and be good to my body. To do these things and also have the energy to be a mother and a wife and an employee and a daughter, I have to fuel well. I have to be smart. So I think, and I truly believe that running 100 miles and drinking alcoholically cannot coexist. I don't think that's possible.
That's probably true.
Yeah, never
It'd
tried
be
it.
very difficult.
I mean, for reals. um, but yeah, this is something that has just reinforced all of the values that have come with a life in sobriety. And, I'm incredibly grateful. And it's every time I'm out there, it's an opportunity to really lean into gratitude to be able to do these things, because had I chosen another path, then that might not be the case. Um, it has given me the opportunity to get closer to my cousin. It's given me the opportunity to get closer to my husband. It's a huge ask of family to give you the time and the space to go train for these things. But for example, for the 100 miler that I ran in 2023, I was able to have pacers for the second half of that race. And the pacers included my husband, who hates nothing more than running. He hates running with a passion. He came out and he ran me across the finish line. He ran the last 20 miles with me.
20 miles is no short
That's
distance for
not
someone who
nothing.
does not like to
Nope.
run.
No, 20 miles in the dark, in the cold, over the rocks and the mountains. Like he did it. He did the thing. And Andrew ran 22 miles with me. And Andrew and I, yes, we've been, we're cousins, but really we had not spent a ton of time together. But he expressed an interest and and support for this crazy thing, and he, of course, was totally game to come up from North Carolina and do this. And so we got to run from mile 57 to mile 80 together in like under stars and a moon with owls, and it was just so cool. And we did some talking and we did some silent running. He was there for my low, because with all these distances you hit lows, like really bad lows, like where you're thinking, what am I thinking? This is stupid. I don't want to do this. I want to quit. It's inevitable. You're going to get there. You're going to think, and you convince yourself you've had enough. It's time to quit. And miraculously, you don't quit, and then you're reinvigorated, and like that reinvigoration takes you across the finish line, and a lot of times you feel just as good as you did before you started. It's crazy. I don't know how it works. He was amazing because he just held space.
Yeah.
He didn't push me in one way or another. He just held space for me because I wasn't necessarily verbalizing it. He watched the mental decline. The other cool thing with these longer races is the aid stations, especially when they are multi-day or, more than 24 hours. This one, it took us 23 and a half hours, or took me 23 and a half hours to run. So in the middle of the night in the forest, you have an aid station, and it's really trippy because a lot of times they set up Christmas lights, and it's like you're running into the North Pole. Like you have people with like onesie animal suits on, and they're like making chocolate chip cookies in the middle of the woods, like with a bonfire, and it's so cool. Glow sticks everywhere. And Andrew's like, I feel like I'm tripping. Where are we right now?
Yeah, that is kind of bizarre to see, like just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like pitch black for hours and hours and hours.
Yep. I mean, you have your headlamp, but you're only seeing right here, right? And so, yeah, it was crazy. And so we ran into that, and I was pretty low at that point, and he watched me consume like 8 chocolate chip cookies and 5 cups of broth and pierogies. And then 20 minutes later, we were booking it, like booking it. And that was probably at mile like 75 or something like that, which was super cool. So, and he was there at the finish line too. All the other crew had gone to sleep at that point, as they should have, but he was there at the finish line.
Yeah, and he failed to mention that when he told me about you. He completely didn't even mention that to me. Like super humble dude, super good dude.
Super good, super
And
humble.
you guys have that memory together, and that's so cool.
Yeah. And we ran the JFK 50 miler together, and he crushed that race.
What would you tell someone who's thinking about getting into ultra running but is like, I'm not really sure, or they don't know where to start, they don't know what shoes to get, like they don't know what to do? What would you tell them?
Do it 100%. You can. Don't think you can't. It's 1 mile at a time, you know, and it's not about winning, it's about starting and finishing. Like you can do that. So and you're going to be out there, and it's about the journey from point A to point B. Stay in the moment, when it's going to hurt, and when it hurts, no, it's not going to hurt forever. But the reward is, it transcends that race 100%. It transcends it. It's going to carry you into a lot of other areas of your life. And when it comes to like gear, that comes. You don't need to know everything from the get go because it's going to be unique to you. You need to find what works for you. What works for me is certainly not what works for most of my friends. Um, um, and it's, you get experience as time goes on, and your feet get bigger because you're pounding on the ground for hours at a time. So the shoes that worked for me 5 years ago, they don't work for me anymore.
Do you have like a go-to piece of running gear or shoe or something?
Yeah, my hydration vest is like my best friend. I actually had the same hydration vest for like 4.5 years, and it disintegrated. It like disintegrated at the last race. My crew was like, "It's time to burn this. This is disgusting." And then wool socks. I swear by wool socks, especially when you're running through water, because sometimes you have these river crossings when you've got water coming up to here, so you're going to get wet. And I think wool socks stave off the blisters pretty adequately.
I'm really interested talking about women trying to get into running, the safety aspect of maybe they're in an area where it's not necessarily safe to run, or do you have any advice or things that you do to make sure that you stay safe while you're running?
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to talk about because, the truth is it's not the safest world to run in anymore, sadly. So if you have another person to run with, I think that is ideal. If you don't, if I can't run with another person, I will typically run with my dog. And he's a scary looking dog. He's a big baby, but I mean, he's scary looking, which is great. But I run with, if you have pepper spray, have pepper spray on your body. There's a little bracelet. It's called Little Viper. So it's a little rubber bracelet with a little pepper spray canister. So it's really easy just to like do this and spray if you feel like somebody is coming with you or coming at you and you're uncomfortable. I wear aftershocks. Headphones, they're the bone conductors, so your eardrums or your ear canals aren't covered, so you can hear your surroundings still. Definitely recommend that. And I think, just always be aware of your surroundings, and really have your phone on you. I do recommend, like, if you have a Strava app or some kind of an air tag, if you have to run by yourself, let somebody know you're heading out and where you're going, especially if you're going out there for hours on the end. If I have a 6-hour training run, I need to let my husband know where I am. And he can often follow me on an app. So that's really helpful. Those are some key elements to staying safe. Always have a phone on you. I know it's really, sometimes you just want to get away from it, but I think it's important to have a phone on you just in case. because even if it's not a person or an animal, I've run into coyotes, I've run into snakes. Even if it's not a person or an animal, if you roll an ankle and you need help, you need help.
I think that's great advice.
I think so too.
I think that running is not for everybody. It truly is not. But if there is any kind of question about whether or not it could be for you, I think giving it a try is the right first step to figure it out. It's changed my life in the most wonderful way, and just by introducing me to people who don't judge me for being weird, who don't judge my mental health. They're nothing but supportive, and vice versa. Like, it's not a judgy atmosphere. Like I said, everybody, stocks up on, gummy nerds and humanity before they leave the start line. It's important to do that. And I think that it's a load of fun. Like, you don't know what a lot can happen. A lot can happen in 2 hours in the woods. A lot can happen. And it's always a different adventure, always a different race, always a different training run. It's so fulfilling. And it's becoming really big, I think. There are so many cool races out there to kind of go explore. It gets you off your butt, gets you away from a screen.
What is your next race that you're training for, and what is your like dream race?
I'm actually not signed up for anything currently, which is for the first time in 5 years. I am putting my Western States lottery tickets into the pool, into the draw on December 7th. So fingers crossed I get into Western States for 2026. That would be amazing. But I'm contemplating signing up for a race called Devil Dog Ultras right over in Prince William Forest. So highly recommend it. Big military presence typically over there. I did run the OSS CIA night race. It was a 50 miler in the Prince William Forest, which is where they filmed the opening scene of A Silence of the Lambs, by the way, where Jodie Foster's running in the woods.
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's a really cool race. It's all at night, and you don't know the course. It's like a surprise. But this race, the Devil Dogs race, is a 100 mile. They have three distances: 100K, 100 miler, and 50K. And I am contemplating running the 100 miler. That is also in December. And my dream race, other than Western States, I have two. One is over in the Alps. It's called Mont Blanc, or over in Mont Blanc, Chamonix. It's a 100 miler, and this crazy ultra trail running is pretty big in Europe, a lot bigger than it is here. So just to go over there and run through the Alps, it traverses 3 different countries over there. So that would be awesome. Super cool. Super cool. But if I can't do that, I have my eyes set on the Cocodona 250, which is a 256-mile race over the course of 5 days across Arizona desert. I'd like to do that in the next couple of years.
Okay, so 5 days. How do you break that up?
You have 5 days to complete it. It might not take you 5 days.
Got it.
One of the things you do have to take into consideration for the multi-day races is how you're going to handle sleep. There are different strategies. I've never run beyond 100 miles, and I didn't sleep. So I think, it's recommended that you kind of take the nap approach. You take cat naps a couple of times if you want to, because if you think about it, if you take 5 days, you're out there for like a lot of hours. If you can finish it, the faster you can finish it, that's a bonus. But people will nap for like 20 minutes at an aid station, and then they'll get up and they'll keep going. Or they'll try to get in like 100 miles, take a nap, then keep going. They'll take, an hour and a half nap. People take trail naps, so they'll just kind of lie down on the ground as long as they have a pacer with them to watch over them. And they'll be like, set a timer for 15, and then they'll hop up and they'll keep going.
As we start to wrap up the show, something we're doing new for season 2 is we're asking everyone for their hot take.
Oh my gosh, you totally caught me off guard.
Yeah,
I love this so much, though. What a great way to close. Yeah, I think that the most overrated gear for ultra running is probably the supplements like the goos and the chews and stuff. You can get away with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich just fine.
That's a good hot take.
That is a good hot take, because I feel like there's so much marketing around it that, especially when you're new, you're like, I have to do that. And then to hear you saying like, no, you can eat
Just make
normal
yourself a
food.
peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, you can get away with not buying anything new except for a pair of shoes, making sure like you just don't be a victim to the marketing.
Do you use the poles? Do you recommend them?
Not for all races, but for the longer races with a lot of climb, especially when you're coming down, because it can really just destroy your quads when you're exhausted on tired legs and you've got a technical decline. They help a lot there, and they break up the monotony. Like you can do a lot of. There's so many ways that there's a very, very famous, in my mind, the greatest of all time women ultramarathon runners, Courtney Dauwalter, and she talks about the pain cave. So that's that low. And there's so many cool ways that you can kind of strategize your way out of the pain cave. And I think running with poles and counting is a really great way to get out of the pain cave. Highly recommend it.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
This was really fun. It honestly kind of just felt like girls hanging out, but we're really excited to like share your story and just like let people hear all about you.
Awesome. I'm so honored that you had me on the show. It's been really fun. Thank you for making it easy to talk to you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week sharing more stories and more collaboration. Thank you so much, Emily, for joining us on our show.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Shelaborate. We can't wait to bring you more episodes.
Don't forget to follow, like, and drop us a review. Our episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Patreon.
If you liked the show, post it on your social media and pass it along. Women supporting women is the whole point.
We'll be back next week with more opinions, more stories, and more collaboration.
Until then, I'm Kath.
And I'm Tyra. This podcast is for the girls.